I am Matthew Martin, and I'm a product designer here at Ithaca. Today I'm going to share an experiment with connecting metadata to the Getty controlled vocabularies using IA and vectorization. Okay, what does that mean? Well, first, I set out on this journey alone, but along the way, I had lots of friends that helped me out. So I want to take a moment and just like thank you for all the time that you've helped me answering my questions and jumping in. So what is the Getty vocabulary, and why do we care? Well, these are carefully selected lists of words and phrases used to tag and find content for art and architecture. It's a controlled vocabulary. Um, and what we did is we focused on one vocabulary called the Union List of Artist Names, also known as ULAN. So cataloging with these terms from a vocabulary will make a consistent and robust descriptive metadata experience, which will improve access to our digital collections. It will increase connections with other scholarly material and should improve discovery. To the right, I'm showing how you would do this by hand. So in the creator field on forum, you see that there is Salvador Dali, and then underneath that is the ULAN connection. And how you would do that is you would have this little search box and you would type it in, find Dali, and click on it, and away you go. But it's very hands-on. Um, but it is easy. However, enriching the metadata like that is kind of resource and time intensive. And I was talking to Christine, and she's like, "Yeah, the problem is, we can find it, but it takes, to do the actual linking is, a time suck." So the problem statement I came up with was, as a cataloger, I want something that enriches my metadata, so I feel free to focus on more complex metadata tasks. Okay. I also needed a bunch of training data, and this is where Christine came in. I had some spreadsheets, but we have a treasure trove of high quality metadata, and all I need is the ID and the name. And then I needed to anonymize it so that uh, it passed Heather's legal rigor. And so I created a CSV file of just those two things. Okay, easy enough. Thank you, Christine. So instead of just needing 1,000, I actually got 50,000. So cool. I'm like, I'm going to feed this to the artificial intelligence. And whoops. And it did. It's like, hey, man, I loaded it. I got your CSV. I put it into Pandas data frame. Uh, I split the data, right? So I have it. Let's see. What did you say? I've got. I switched to a regression model and I'm training the validation system. I'm like, this is wonderful. Cool. Thanks, buddy. It even went further and say, okay, so I'm going to went from 400 examples to 4,000. I switched to this regression model, and the accuracy actually jumped from 78 to 83%. I'm like, really? That's great. I'm going to test it out. So I said, okay, here's Andy Warhol, here's Lucas Samaras, here's Chuck Close. Guess what? It was hallucinating the whole time. I was like, oh man, I'm so bummed out. But I talked to my fictitious friend Bucky, and he said there is no such thing as a failed experiment, only experiments with unexpected outcomes. So I felt a little better. So that's when I knew I had to get in the muscle. And I said, okay, I need some help here. Who can help me out? And right away, Benjamin was like, I think it's overkill. And I'm like, yeah, I guess I'm kind of using a sledgehammer to open up crack a walnut. And he's like, why don't you just try some vectorization? And she was actually working on something similar. I'm like, hey, could you take my data? And he's like, yeah. So I'll give it a shot. So I felt pretty good about that. But again, that didn't quite work either. But you never learn less, you can only learn more. So that's kind of how I took this. And it actually gave us some direction for the future. We should probably think more about vectorization and how we can use like prefix matching and other things like that. So as we go forward, we definitely have a path forward. This is something that we've been wanting to do for a while. And I don't know if artificial intelligence will play a part, but it could. And that's another thing that I wanted to think about during this time was what is the future consequences of that? Sure, it's going to improve efficiency. You can focus on more complex metadata tasks. But what if those tasks, eliminate some of those, jobs? And what if it perpetuates some of those biases? Um, you're going to lose some of that subtle human contextualization when you actually do some of this cataloging. So I think what we need to do is be careful of making sure that we're bringing people in to train those models, like catalogers and metadata librarians, making sure they're part of the quality control and they remove the bias. And we're transparent about how we're using artificial intelligence and what kind of oversight we have, and if we can provide compensation and retraining if those jobs are displaced. So finally, I just want to say, when we're designing, we must ask ourselves, what do I actually do? What is the final application and use of the products of my work? And am I content or ashamed to how I've contributed to this use?